Okay, let's get going. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Pete Hebert. I'm Executive Director of MassEcon. Welcome to the Massachusetts Business Incentives Primer. This is part of a series of forums on topical matters around economic development that MassEcon presents throughout the year. And we'd certainly invite everybody at this forum to stay tuned and take a look at www.massecon.com and check out our upcoming events calendar for more programs like this. So our agenda today, we feature the incentives primer, and we're very pleased to have three outstanding speakers, Peter Milano from Mass Office of Business Development, Gina Clare from the Mass Life Sciences Center, and Kelly Arvidsson from Mass Development. We also will feature an extensive question and answer period, and we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to present a question if desired. And there'll be a couple opportunities, a couple methods by which you can do that. You can use the chat room function, and you can also use the raise your hand function when the time comes during our Q&A period. We are not going to field any questions. Our panelists won't field any questions until after each presents. And so after Peter, Jean, and Kelly are done with their presentations, then we'll open up the Q&A period for your questions. So hold those questions. Feel free to, if you want to use that chat function to offer a question over the course of the event, that's fine. We just aren't going to get to that question until the Q&A period. So I first want to thank our event sponsors, MassBio, and we very much appreciate Kendall O'Connell, Zach Stanley, and their team at MassBio for supporting this event. And we'll be hearing from Ben Bradford in just a couple minutes. We want to thank our friends at Nutter for their support and their team led by Mike Scott, also one of our board directors here at MassEcon. Thank you, Nutter. Lincoln Property Company, we're very appreciative for its support. They have a lot of great properties out there in the marketplace, and we want to thank Tim Latham and his team for their support for this event. And Bowditch, we're very appreciative again to have Bowditch back as a sponsor. And with that, I would like to introduce Paul Bauer, partner at Bowditch and Dewey, for a few opening remarks. Paul.
Thanks, Pete, and good morning. I'm Paul Bauer, a partner at the law firm of Bowditch and Dewey, and a board member of MassEcon. Welcome to this primer on Massachusetts incentives. Everyone will hear more about MassEcon in the program, but Bowditch and I are proud to be involved with this organization as a key driver of growth and prosperity in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And we are proud to sponsor this event, which will illustrate the numerous ways the state and business work together to create a dynamic economic climate. As a mid-sized law firm, Bowditch represents companies and individuals running the gamut in size and needs. I particularly wanted to mention that, like MassEcon, Bowditch works on projects throughout the state. With offices in Boston, Framingham, and Worcester, we work with clients having many different perspectives on what makes a thriving business environment for them. We believe that the understanding we get from these perspectives helps us earn a place on BTI's honor roll of most recommended firms. I'm the practice area for our real estate and environmental and business and finance groups. And by practice, I'm a real estate attorney focusing on challenging transactions. The past year has given new meaning to challenging, but I'm pleased that 2021 is shaping up to be an exciting year back. On the board of MassEcon, I love to hear the views of our various board members, all with great ideas to make MassEcon successful. But just as importantly, to further our mission of making the Commonwealth a thriving place to live and work. With that, I'll turn it back to Pete to get the program started.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, and we do appreciate your support, both as a sponsor of this event and as one of our outstanding directors of our board. So thank you very much. For a few remarks, I also get to introduce a great friend and colleague, Ben Bradford, Vice President for Membership and Economic Development at MassBio. Ben's going to talk a couple minutes about Team Massachusetts. You're going to hear a lot about Team Massachusetts during the course of this conversation today, and Ben is going to provide some insight. And Ben's also going to introduce a video that talks about Team Massachusetts as well. So with that, very pleased to introduce Ben Bradford.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this morning. And Pete, thank you for the introduction and the ongoing partnership. As Pete mentioned, I'm Ben Bradford, and I oversee membership and economic development for MassBio. For those of you that don't know, MassBio is the industry trade association representing and supporting more than 1,400 organizations who are dedicated to bring value and treatments to patients. It's important to note that while Massachusetts has 19 of the top 20 global pharmaceutical companies with a presence here in Massachusetts, that nearly 70% of our membership has 50 employees or fewer. And those companies are focused on cutting-edge research development that will have a profound impact on patient lives. So while we're not a governmental organization and represent companies from all over the country and the world, I do have the pleasure of working very closely with all of today's panelists as part of Team Massachusetts. As a group, we discuss companies that are looking to relocate to Massachusetts, but also, and I'd argue more importantly, to help these smaller Massachusetts-based companies expand their operations. Recently, Massachusetts was once again named the #1 state for the life sciences industry. The growth of these companies and their shift towards manufacturing in Massachusetts gives us all great faith that will remain there moving forward. So with that, I bring you this video, and I look forward to hearing about all of the incentives that are available to these companies as they grow and thrive here in Massachusetts and continue to help the global condition.
You have the seashore, you have the hills, you have change of seasons, great sports town.
It's a great place to work. It's a great place to raise a family.
A picture is worth 1,000 words, and this is why people come to Massachusetts.
I'm from the Mass Office of Business Development.
The Executive Offices of Housing and Economic Development.
Massachusetts Growth Capital Corporation.
Massachusetts Life Sciences Center.
The Office of International Trade and Investment.
Mass Development.
MassEcon. We're from different organizations, but we all have the same objectives.
Helping businesses find the right resources.
Helping businesses find the right location.
Helping businesses grow and thrive in Massachusetts.
We are Team Massachusetts.
Massachusetts infrastructure for companies to grow is second to none.
We have an incredibly talented group of folks who call Massachusetts home. It's a dynamic place. It's been that way since the American Revolution, so a lot of history, a lot of change, and always pushing the pace.
We've got the most educated and talented workforce anywhere in the world, and it is a workforce that culturally is grown to want to solve big challenges.
Just like the most important words in real estate, location, location, location. If you're an innovative economy, it's workforce, workforce, workforce. And that's what's bringing companies to Massachusetts from around the United States and also international.
Team Massachusetts, we truly work as a team. We come from a variety of different organizations with the common goal of just keeping business in Massachusetts and bringing additional companies to Massachusetts.
We find the right companies that can actually grow here in Massachusetts. It's the strategic approach.
We act as a concierge for companies that are looking to expand in Massachusetts, and then we stick with them until the end of the process.
If you call one of us, you're going to get all of us. We talk to each other, we communicate. I think we trust each other that we're not going to let each other down. So a company is going to be in good hands when they jump in with Massachusetts.
There's something great happening, and you can't afford not to be here. You know, this is where the world's IQs are coming together and mixing it up, and your competitors are going to be here. You need to be here. You need to tap into all the talents that Massachusetts brings.
Well, thank you all for taking a peek at that video about Team Massachusetts. And Team Massachusetts is more organizations, even those featured on that video. And really the concept of collaboration and teamwork is absolutely essential to helping companies grow here in Massachusetts, and especially helping companies relocate to Massachusetts. As you'll see, MassEcon is one of those members of Team Massachusetts, and I want to talk just very briefly about our role. Our job is to promote and champion Massachusetts as a great place to locate businesses too. We have a lot of different programming at MassEcon. We market Massachusetts. We do research. We tap into private sector expertise. We recognize businesses for making the decision to grow in Massachusetts. With regard to our Team Massachusetts role, especially, just want to talk a couple minutes about our site location services and that particular role. In 2020, we're very active. It was a very active year for Massachusetts. A lot of projects coming to Massachusetts. MassEcon was involved in 54 total site location projects with 6,400 jobs in play. Over 4.7 million square feet sought. And of all those projects, many of which are continuing into this year, 2020, since January of 2020, 1.2 million square feet actually a part of the 8 project wins that we were associated with, over 1,000 new jobs for Massachusetts, $650 million in direct investment. So, our role, along with so many on Team Massachusetts, it varies, and it really depends on the opportunity. Some of these opportunities are local businesses looking to expand in Massachusetts. Others are foreign businesses that are coming to us from overseas, and they arrive at different entry points. In some cases, MassEcon will deal directly with a corporate site selector that's working on behalf of a company that's considering Massachusetts among many states or countries as a location. MOBD, the trade organization like MassBio might be working with a biotech that's considering Massachusetts. The Life Science Center, so many other entry points. Ultimately, though, those all come together at Team Massachusetts so that it can advance these and fill the needs that these different opportunities seek. In some cases, we're looking for a site. In other cases, we need labor market information. It's state incentives, local incentives, or it's all of these things combined, it being sought by these different opportunities. And so Team Massachusetts, that role is to provide a response often to requests for proposals from the Commonwealth, and it's project management of all of these different projects that are considering Massachusetts either for expansion or relocation. And ultimately, the stamp in terms of responses, formal responses going out to these opportunities emanates from the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. There are a lot of different factors in play. Some of these projects can go very quickly in a matter of weeks or less. Other projects take years. But through it all, case management, the project management is absolutely vital. And that's what Team Massachusetts is really involved in. And really need to emphasize this, the role of municipal and regional partners is significant in many of these projects. So it's one thing for the state team to be working on these projects. Ultimately, having a municipality or a regional organization also part of the team becomes crucial in the end to a success story for Massachusetts. So in terms of MassEcon projects, just for example, those 54 that we worked on last year, lead origins, 55 were from Massachusetts. Thing to remember about a company that's based in Massachusetts and perhaps grew up here is they often have to look outside of Massachusetts for locations as well, not because they want to, but if they're a publicly traded company, they have a board of directors, they have to do their due diligence. So we can't take for granted those companies that are already here, and they don't necessarily have to expand here. And so those are an important part of companies in play. Out of state was the origin for 37% of the projects that we worked on and 8% international. And our lead sources, 40% of the companies that we work with came directly to MassEcon, and 60% went to our many state partners. And so just wanted to give you a glimpse of our role at MassEcon, the role that we play as part of Team Massachusetts. And with that, we get to really the centerpiece of today's program, which is the incentives primer. And I want to introduce our first speaker of our three that will be weighing in on incentives. Very pleased to introduce Peter Milano, Senior Director of the Mass Office of Business Development. Peter, it is all yours.
Thanks, Pete. And good morning, everyone. I also want to thank Annie and Tegan. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today to this group. I work for the Mass Office of Business Development. We are an executive branch agency, and we, in essence, call ourselves the state's sales team. We also consider ourselves part of the team. Team Massachusetts is a big deal to us, so we try to stay within the realm of the team. So, next slide, Pete. If you look at this slide, if you look on the left side, the left column, I'll probably not talk too much about those items at this point. They'll either come up in a couple of slides, or my partners will talk about them. And well, we have some financing folks that are going to discuss this, with the exception of financing partnerships, because Kelly works for Mass Development. I think I'll leave that one alone. I do want to bring up one item in that is Mass Growth Capital Corp. So Mass Growth Capital, and we'll talk about them a little bit more as well in a second, but they are a financing entity. But you'll hear a great deal about what Mass Growth Capital is doing with regards to sector-specific grants. The state has made over $600 million through Mass Growth Capital Corp in sector-specific grants to industries that were really hit hard through the COVID challenge, and that has flowed through the Massachusetts Growth Capital Corp. I'll flow down the Economic Development Incentive Program. That's something that the Mass Office of Business Development owns. We'll talk about that. Regional Economic Development Organizations, partner grants, we'll talk about that. I'll fly over to the right side of the column, if I may. One of the things that the state has realized is we need to partner with any and all agencies willing to work with us. We want to work with companies, entrepreneurs, large, small. So startups are a big part of the Baker-Polito administration's focus as far as business development is concerned. The Small Business Development Center, SCORE, any entity that's willing to work with small businesses, realizing that they can and will become large companies at some point, will work with our federal partners on that. Technical assistance will flow through the Mass Growth Capital Corporation. They provide grants to small business technical assistance providers. International trade. You saw on the Team Mass video, one of our partners is Mark Sullivan from the International Trade Office. We call it MOITI, Mass Office of International Trade and Investments. MOITI will assist. They can provide grants to companies looking to promote their export activity. Those are called STEP grants. Additionally, MOITI can assist with export assistance. We have a Mass Export Center that MOITI works closely with. Export-import assistance, some technical assistance is available for companies looking to increase their activities in that area as well. Site selection, we know that's MassEcon's area. We certainly leave that up to them. Permit and regulatory assistance, that falls through our executive office, the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development. Mass Permit and Regulatory Office. We recently rolled out something called the One-Stop Portal for Growth. It's www.mass.gov/onestop. In there, you'll find all of our economic development grants, regardless of the issuing entity, and we've really streamlined that process. So any of our partners that have applied for grants in the past will see that we've made it much easier, regardless of the type of grant that a municipality or a partner agency would look to apply for. The one-stop portal has really assisted. And I put infrastructure support underneath that. That really comes down to mass work. So some of our larger economic development projects may need some assistance, whether it's road work, infrastructure, utilities. But for some utilities coming to the site, this may not happen. And the state, through the Baker-Polito administration, has invested more heavily in infrastructure support than any administration ever in the history of the Commonwealth. So next slide, Pete. The program that the Mass Office of Business Development owns in our core deliverable is called the Economic Development Incentive Program, or EDIP. And what in essence, the Economic Development Incentive Program is a tax incentive program whereby a partnership is formed between a participating growing company, a municipality, and in some instances, the state, with each part of the partnership agreeing to bring something forward. The company agrees to provide net new jobs in the company, as well as retaining any jobs that they may already have in Massachusetts. And the company will also agree to a capital expenditure. The community will agree to provide real estate tax relief based on the increased value that the company's capital expenditure creates. That relief can be between 5 and 100% of the increased value for a term of between 5 and 20 years. This relief has a name. It's called a Tax Increment Financing Agreement. Almost always it's referred to by its acronym, or a TIF. Additionally, the community may also provide personal property tax exemptions on the same schedule, 5 to 20 years, 5 to 100% of the value. And then lastly, the state may also provide state tax credits. Everybody likes tax credits. They get talked about a lot, but there's a lot of contributing factors that go into whether or not the state will utilize tax credits. Location of the project is very important to us. We prefer to invest in gateway cities or cities that are hard and scramble or need the investment, have had closings. The type of industry, manufacturers are certainly given priority. The number of retained jobs, the number of net new jobs, the size of the capital expenditure, whether the company has a tax liability and can utilize tax credits is a big contributing factor for us. And then lastly, our budget. We have a budget each year of about $20 million in new money that we spread out between all 351 cities and towns. Next slide, Pete. So this year, we expect an announcement actually this week. The Baker-Polito administration announced a new program for COVID relief to our partner agencies. So 501Cs could apply with, or municipalities. And this was for entities that had an idea of how they could assist in their geographies to assist with COVID, as far as structurally assisting economic development growth. That's called Regional Pilot Program grants. And we received 47 applications. We're going to fund 37 of those applications across the state. There are multiple municipal applications, and we do expect an announcement on that very shortly. The Mass Office of Travel and Tourism, as I previously mentioned, they have something called STEP grants. That's to increase marketing for export development for Massachusetts companies. And the big one is the Mass Growth Capital Corp. Mass Growth Capital is going to make upwards of $725 million of sector-specific grants to the hardest hit industries in Massachusetts. And that program is well underway and should be coming to a close relatively soon, but they have done miraculous work under the most difficult of circumstances. Next slide, Pete. In the workforce development, we have career centers. There's 26 of them, or 29 if you consider there's three that have, three of them that has 2 locations across the Commonwealth. Mass Hire Career Centers are there to assist companies and individuals with their reemployment. Through the Mass Hire Career Centers, employers and companies can find services that the Labor and Workforce Development Agency provides. One of those programs, a layoff aversion tool, is called Workshare. Companies can save some or all of their pay by laying employees off for up to 3 days a week and use Workshare. The Commonwealth can assist with that. There's also some federal programs called Work Opportunity Tax Credit. It's something that is available. We're happy to assist. Any of our team members would be happy to assist. Next slide, Pete. Staying on labor and workforce development, one of the tools that we use just about every time we speak with a company is the Workforce Training Fund grant. This is a 50-50 matching fund grant program whereby the Commonwealth could conceivably contribute up to 50% of a company's training budget. The beauty of the program and the real flexibility of the program is that for successful applicants, while the Commonwealth would contribute a cash contribution into the training account of the company, we wouldn't ask the company to make a cash contribution. We would simply ask the company to pay its employees as they go through their training program and back out their pay as what's known as an in-kind contribution. It's a very flexible, very popular program, and our team is available to assist any companies around the state or service providers who have clients that are interested in this program. We also have safety training grants, relatively small, up to $25,000. These can be awarded year over year, not for the same type of training, but to the same company. And there's safety consultation through the Division of Labor Standards. That's a free service to the Commonwealth. That was a relative. Next slide. So staying with the technical assistance theme, Mass Small Business Development Centers are located across the Commonwealth. They are partner agencies of ours. They are funded partly by the state, partly by the federal government. There is a Center for Women in Enterprise. There's veteran outreach centers. And then we added one there that's been really active called Small Business Strong. Next slide, Pete. So you see here, we've shaded the regions, and it's important to note, we do have a regional director in each of these colors. It's not important that you find the right regional director. It's important that you find any member of our team. Next slide, Pete. We have, I should have mentioned, we have 12 members of our team, 7 regional directors. Any member, whether they administer a program or are a regional director, will work with you and get you to the results that you're looking for. So I'm sorry, back up to metrics. I shouldn't have breezed over that quickly. In 2020, we had, through the Economic Development Incentive Program, we had 33 projects, about $1.1 billion in leveraged investment, and we can look to about 3,400 jobs created. Through the Workforce Training Fund, they did just under 170 grants and over $18 million in Workforce Training Fund grants. And remember, that's only half of the amount of training that was actually provided. It could be more than twice that amount. So here you see contacts with mobile phones for every regional director that works for the Mass Office of Business Development. Don't bother with worrying which part of the map your project is located. I honestly tell you, you could call any one of these folks. They are well-trained and motivated. They will work with you. The map and the borders are just something that we had to do, we have to do, but every one of these folks can work in any part of the Commonwealth, especially since COVID, where we're all working virtually. And we really do look forward to working and partnering with you. Thanks, Pete. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Really appreciate that overview of MOVD and your activities and the many programs that you're associated with. Our next speaker is Jean LeClaire, Director of Business Development at the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center. We're very glad to have Jean with us. Her contact information is also presented below her name slide there. We wanted to feature the Life Science Center and its many programs just because so many of our projects of late are in the life sciences, and Life Science Center has very robust programs and incentives to support the additional growth of the industry here in Massachusetts. And so with that, very pleased to introduce Jean LeClaire. Jean.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here this morning. You can go to the next slide, Peter. Massachusetts Life Sciences Center, in case anyone hasn't heard of it, it's a little bit more of the obscure side of Team Massachusetts, but we're proud to be a part of Team Massachusetts. We are a quasi-public economic development and investment agency that focuses exclusively on the life sciences sector. So our mission is to support growth and development of the life sciences in Massachusetts, and often that metric is job growth and sustainability, as well as companies supported across the Commonwealth, not just in Boston and Cambridge. So that is one of our strongest areas. Next slide. So throughout the Commonwealth, I was looking at the attendance list for today, and it looks like most people are from Massachusetts, which is great. So I don't need to tell you about what a great place it is, but I will say just for the life sciences, it's a very attractive place to be. We're very competitive globally and on some lists #1. And most of that is due to our strong talent resources, which is thanks to our great universities, our community college system, our public education system, as well as our world-class research hospitals and other academic and research infrastructure. We also do a really great job of connecting companies with capital through venture capital, angel investors, but also we're top of the list for NIH funding to universities and research institutions. So we're very proud of our various public-private partnerships that contributes to a lot of the success, again, across the Commonwealth. Next slide. So we have several different funding programs that run throughout the year and are targeted in different ways and use different kinds of funds, but I'm going to focus on 2 for the purposes of today that are considered incentive programs. One is our somewhat aptly named tax incentive program, and that is geared toward creating new permanent job growth. So companies need to already be in Massachusetts, they need to already have 10 full-time employees, and they need to commit to hiring at least 10 more within the year that they're applying for. There's a lot of nuance and nitty-gritty rules and regulations about eligibility and compliance that we follow through with over the course of 5 years once they're accepted into the program. So at any point, if there's questions about that toward the end, I'm happy to answer them. But broadly speaking, those incentives can be applied for the company in terms so that they become a refundable tax credit. And that's a really attractive tool that we have when we're talking to companies that are considering locating in Massachusetts or companies that are considering expanding and hiring within Massachusetts. The other program is somewhat similar. It's the Massachusetts Transition and Growth Program, which we refer to as MassTag. Again, there's a lot of acronyms I think you'll hear today, but MassTag is focused on, as the words say, transition and growth. So that's companies that are located outside of Massachusetts that are considering establishing their first presence within the Commonwealth. So we incentivize between 10 and 49 jobs for companies that are committing to coming here for the first time. That approximate dollar amount is $15,000 per job, and they have to retain those jobs for 3 years. And again, there's a whole compliance infrastructure associated with that. But if you're within the state, if you're a municipality, if you're a regional economic development entity, these are two really good programs to be aware of and tools that you can use if you're having your own conversations with companies that are located in your area, considering expanding, or companies that are considering coming to Massachusetts again for the first time. Next slide. So we support the life sciences sector broadly, and we support all kinds of different companies of different sizes and different stages of their growth. This is a nice guide in terms of companies that we're especially interested in talking to incentivize their growth and incentivize them to come to Massachusetts. So there's a huge focus this year and in recent years on advanced biomanufacturing, as well as cell and gene therapy. Our tax incentive program is very competitive, and so every year we're making decisions about funding based on sometimes these focus areas to make sure that we're prioritizing companies that are checking some of these boxes and expanding in a way that we feel is strategic and contributes to the economic sort of development as well as the life sciences ecosystem itself. So included in that also is microbiome, anything dealing with data science or artificial intelligence. That's a huge need within the ecosystem, as well as women's health and perhaps somewhat obviously COVID-19. We've seen a lot of really exciting developments in terms of diagnostics, treatments, vaccine development, as maybe you're aware of. And so it's been really great to be able to have these somewhat nimble focus areas from year to year so that we can, again, use these incentives strategically. Next slide. And once a company is here and located in Massachusetts, whether through the tax incentive program or simply because they chose to come here because of market forces or because they knew about our great talent or our great infrastructure, we have a series of other programs that are sort of geared toward addressing the various questions that come up in a company's development. We have, again, specific programs targeted at data science, an internship challenge that's very popular where we will reimburse a company for internships that they hold and host. In many cases, that has meant that companies are partnering somewhat directly with community college systems, again, with our great universities, and that's been a really strong, I think, attractive message for companies, again, that are considering coming to Massachusetts. You can go to that next slide. So just this past year, we've offered about $21 million in tax incentives to 37 companies, and that's created just over 1,280 jobs. Through our other programs that I mentioned, we've also contributed $23 million in capital investment to Massachusetts core facilities, research institutions, and incubators. And in many cases, that's incentivizing public-private partnerships. So in many cases, those projects have a company sponsor and then a nonprofit research institution, academic entity, or hospital on the other side of that we are actually contributing the capital to. So our projects can be somewhat broad, but also have very specific focus areas from year to year. And it's not just about economic development and job creation, but also contributing to the life sciences ecosystem as a whole so that it stays as strong and dynamic across the Commonwealth as it already is. That's it.
Well, thank you, Jean. Really appreciate that insight. Terrific programs, and you know, I can recall years ago, you know, why programs just for the life sciences? Well, we see such incredible multiplier effects from this industry into other supporting and related industries, and indirectly to many more industries beyond that. And so we are now the epicenter for the global life sciences community right here in Massachusetts. It's something to be proud of, and we're very grateful for the Life Science Center and its stewardship of all these significant programs. So thank you, Jean. Our next speaker, the third part of our triumvirate here this morning, is Kelly Arvidsson, Vice President for Business Development at Mass Development. Kelly, we're really glad you have joined us today, and look forward to hearing your insights, especially in the world of financing.
Thanks, Pete. Really appreciate being here today. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for putting this on. And just, as Ben said, we appreciate the ongoing partnership and our relationship with Team Massachusetts. It's probably the best part of my job. I love what we do. I'd say we've probably all worked on hundreds of projects together and it never gets old. I love the fact that we all trust each other and work so well together. So it's really an honor. And as you said, Kelly Arvidsson managed the business development team at Mass Development. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to my team who's in the audience, Julie Cowan from the West, Mariana McCormick from Boston, Rob Anderson from the Northeast, and Jay Patikas couldn't join us today, but he represents the Southeast. Great team, like Peter said about his team. I couldn't have more pride in them. Call them anything they need, super responsive, great group. So a little bit about, I also want to say hi to Lauren Liss, our former CEO. Great to see her here today. Miss you and love you, Lauren. And so anyway, so on to us. As the MLSC, we are a quasi-public agency, which basically means we're self-funded, but we serve at the pleasure of the governor. Established in 1998, we're mission-driven, which means, we're really double bottom line. We look for great projects that are feasible, but we also need public purpose in everything we do. We're financiers and we're real estate developers, but we're not into things like strip malls and retail and restaurants, but we're into things that create jobs, create housing, both affordable and market rate, and eliminate blight and expand the tax base. Next slide, Pete. So I'm really focusing on financing today, but just a quick note on real estate, because we have a lot of programs for real estate right now. And one of those that you may be aware of, we do real estate projects like Devon's. So that's one of our crown jewels at Mass Development. Just to mention it quickly, it's 4,400 acres. Back in 1996, when we took it over, we lost about 3,500 jobs when the military shut down. We have doubled that amount of jobs now at Devon's. We've got about over 100 companies, 6,000 people working, 200 housing units, and truly this year has probably been our busiest, most exciting year ever. So we've had a lot of life sciences company activity. Bristol Myers Squibb continues to expand, and I know, Pete, you'll touch on that later, but it's just a real source of pride for us. And so on the financing side, we do a lot there, and that's what I will spend a little time on. We do bond financing, we do grants for nonprofits, we do new market tax credits, and we do a lot of direct loans and guarantees. And next slide, Pete. On the tax exempt bond side, I won't read through all these slides, but the main ones that I'll touch on: manufacturers qualify for tax exempt bond financing, nonprofits of all types, whether it's colleges, hospitals, social service organizations. Affordable rental housing are a big user of tax exempt bonds, and it really, the reason to use a tax exempt bond is simply it's a lower cost of capital. You can expect it to be about 75% of what a normal interest rate would be if you qualify for a bond. It's, especially for nonprofits, it's simply the best source of capital out there. So as you read through this later, if you have a project that you want to chat about, we're always happy to chat about a project just to see if it might qualify. Next slide, Pete. So anybody aware of this little company called Treehouse? I'll do a quick study, a quick case study just on them, because they're a perfect use of tax exempt bonds. And it turns out that Mass Development's becoming kind of a great resource for breweries in this area. So this was a great one because we were able to do a $7 million tax exempt bond. We were able to do a mortgage insurance guarantee so that they get a higher loan to value, and an SBA for the equipment. So it was really, to take a homegrown, backyard barn company that was in 5,000 square feet, to take them to, 50,000, and now they're expanding in Sandwich and Deerfield. It's a pretty cool success story for Massachusetts. So next slide. Let's see, where are we? So on the loan side, again, I won't run through all of them, but what I'd love for people to remember is that we can do up to $7.5 million on our own. That's not our preference. Our first choice is always to work with a bank. It's not our goal ever to compete with a bank, but we're a great resource and a great partner, especially because we're just project-based. We're not looking for deposits or working capital or lines of credit. We get in to make a project better. We have a lot of creativity that we can provide. So we have a lot of lenders that will call us and say, here's what we have. How can you make it work? And our goal is to try to get to yes if we possibly can. So just keep us in mind, we're a great resource. And if we're not, we typically know where to send you. Next slide, Pete. And this is just you can skip that slide. Thanks. So I'm just going to touch quickly on a couple of unique programs that are new to mass development. I won't go into too much, but PACE is a new program that we started. It's Property Assessed Clean Energy. It's a very cool program because it allows a company to take on additional financing off balance sheet. So it looks like a betterment assessment. So if it's anything to do with energy improvement, it starts at a floor of about $200,000. It starts to make sense. It's a way to get some big capital projects done without adding to your capital status. So next slide. Next slide. Pete Milano mentioned the One Stop for Growth, which we're super excited about. And it was really a great response to communities feeling like there are so many grant programs out there, and how do you navigate, how to get to which one and what are the deadlines and who do I talk to? In site readiness, this is a Team Massachusetts born program, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. We were touring the state with a life sciences company, and I can remember Secretary Ash saying, I'm really sorry, but we just don't have that many 50-acre sites to show you. And out of that conversation, this program was born to help activate 50+ acre sites that wouldn't normally be available because they have a lack of infrastructure or something else that's prohibiting them from being available. So this has been a real win. We've already done 48 projects. We just announced another 3 million in fiscal year 22. So if you got those projects out there that need a little extra help, call us. We'll talk to anyone. We'll come out and walk the site and find out if there's a way to be helpful. Next slide. And one more brand new program that's super exciting. Part of this One Stop is our underutilized property program, authorized in the 2021 Economic Development Bill. We've got 40 million authorized over 5 years. This is similar to site readiness, but this actually focuses on vacant, blighted, underutilized buildings. It can be taken advantage of by a municipality, a CDC, a nonprofit, or a for-profit developer. The best projects and the most competitive projects have a developer in partnership with a community that have identified a project, super great if it's in the middle of town, that it just doesn't work. The numbers don't work without a subsidy. And so we can add grants from $50,000 to $2 million. And those projects that receive the highest rating are ready to go in 2 months. So if you look around your towns, everybody's got something that they'd love to see redeveloped. This applications are being taken through June, and we're going to be making awards in October and November. And let's see, what's next? Next slide, Pete. And so there's our results for this year. 341 projects, 2.7 billion in the mass economy, and about 10,871 jobs. So that's our story. I'm going to leave with one last note from, as many of you know, we got a new CEO this year. And on my first week of meeting with him, his comment was this, and he was super clear. If there's a large economic development project happening in Massachusetts, Mass Development wants to be at that table, and we will do anything we can to help that project succeed. So I love that thinking. That's why we're here. Love being part of the team, and thanks for letting us participate today, Pete.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Great insight on mass development and all of its incredible financing programs and related programs. We appreciate that. We wanted to spend just a couple minutes on, so we shared a lot with the audience about a lot of different organizations, a lot of different types of programs, but how do they all come together? And so we chose a couple to feature here. One, Massey Systems in Pepperell, Massachusetts. And yeah, I'd welcome any of our speakers, featured speakers to weigh in. But basically, this is just an example of a homegrown company here in Massachusetts, in sort of humble origins in Pepperell, and how they've been able to take advantage of different programs offered by a number of different partners to grow, not only once, not twice, 3 times over the years since 2008. And so we have the EDIP program in place here in 2008, helping grow jobs with the state investment through investment tax credit, mass development equipment loan. At that time, we have a second phase of growth happening in 2012. Again, both the EDIP TIF program in play, and a number of different loans through and guarantees through mass development. We have yet another expansion in phase 3 in 2015. And then beyond that, we have the Mass Life Sciences Center involved in supporting the growth of this significant company with different awards over the 5 years, again, helping them create more jobs in Massachusetts. So, this is one example. It's a homegrown company, but it's one end of the spectrum in terms of the types of support that's available out here. I'll just, happy to have any of our featured speakers weigh in if they chose to. Anyone?
This is exactly the kind of company that we're proud to support. These folks do a great job, and it's exactly an example of how life sciences can benefit the entire Commonwealth. And it's not just all concentrated in this Boston-Cambridge cluster, but can expand to the West as well. So we've given them a few awards. They've been beneficiaries from our tax incentive program that I mentioned earlier. So I think they're a great success story. And if anyone is considering taking advantage of those programs, they might be a good company to connect with to see how they've been able to benefit from it. But great folks.
Yeah, thank you, Gene. Peter.
I've been lucky enough to tour Massey Bioservices, and they're the happiest people. They really are. The workers, the owners, the contractors, that is exactly the type of small business we want to support. They've done great. They're good people.
Thank you, Peter.
I'll just echo that. As you know, I'm the hugest fan of Massey Systems. They're just the gift that keeps on giving at Mass Development. And we love these people. They just continue to do great work. When they started with 30 people, 10 years ago, and now they're at 160. They're just fabulous. They hire locally. They're super corporate citizens. I just can't say enough about how great they've been for us. So thanks for featuring them.
Well, thank you all. And Kelly, you mentioned the gift that keeps giving, and that's an example of our next the next featured case study, and that's Bristol Myers Squibb. So, this is another example of a lot of different state organizations coming together to support what started way back in October 2005 when a corporate site selector contacted my colleague here at MassEcon, Doug Kellum, with a really significant requirement. Massachusetts was one of many states in play for this significant bulk biologics manufacturing facility. At the time, didn't know who the company was, became Bristol Myers Squibb. A lot of people, a lot of organizations came together, especially MOBD, which submitted the RFP response. Mass Bio, one of the Team Massachusetts members, jumped in and corralled a number of existing biomanufacturers and higher education officials to talk to the company when they did a site visit. And of course, Mass Development became involved with Devon's as the chosen Massachusetts candidate site chosen by the company. And so again, over the years, beginning with the first location of the significant employer back in 2006, $650 million investment, and it has grown over the years many times to the point it's 1.3 billion and counting. So there have been successive expansions of that facility over the years, and just earlier this year, 244,000 square foot expansion announced, and additional 350 jobs going right there to the heart of Massachusetts. In central Mass. So another great story. Again, I'm happy to have additional insight from our featured speakers. And after that, we're going to jump right into questions and answers. So anybody want to weigh in on BMS?
I would just say that this site selector continues to come back to Massachusetts and work with us. Win some, lose some, but he can. The firm continues to come back and pitch Massachusetts as an option. We have a very large project pending with them right now.
Yeah, that's true, and so that's where Team Massachusetts really comes into play, and through effective case management, being responsive to these opportunities when they knock on our door. Because often there's so many variables in play. The one variable we don't want to have in play is not seeing the responsiveness from the state or a municipality that's in play. That has to happen for these projects to go forward. So, BMS is is one of many examples. And so we sort of hit the spectrum there, from small, homegrown company to global company that had no presence in Massachusetts and now has is the site of the largest bulk biologics manufacturing in the Western Hemisphere right here in Massachusetts. So some good stories. So now we're going to jump into our Q&A session, and we've allowed a lot of information, a lot of time. We have over half an hour for questions and answers to our featured speakers. There are two ways of doing this. There's the chat function through Zoom. You can offer a question there, or you could use the raise hand function that's also one of the features of Zoom. And as you do so, we are no longer sharing screen at this point, and we want to see everybody's smiling faces here. As you do so, Annie O'Connell on our team will be helping sift through the different questions and offer them up either from the chat room or call on you. So if you have your hand raised, then you will be notified. We're gonna go to you for a question, and so just so that you can get your own house in order, have your screen on and be unmuted. So let's go to Annie. Annie, any questions for our featured speakers?
Thanks, Pete. Yes, we do have a question. So this is a question that I received from Roberta Bryan, who is with the Worcester Business Development Corporation. And she asks, please elaborate on whether the team acts as a clearinghouse for funds and who is the contact to reach out to with a prospective project.
Who wants to handle that one?
Did you say clearinghouse for funds?
Yes.
Is in lending?
No, Peter. My question was, if there's a prospective project, it seems as though Team Massachusetts offers a variety of funds from each organization that participates. Do you just bring the project to the team and they determine which of the programs from each organization that's part of the team and which funds are most appropriate? Or I'm just wondering how it works when someone has a prospective project to put in front of Team Massachusetts.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I'll let everybody wait, but it as Kelly said in the video, when you reach one of us, you reach all of us, and so For example, MassEcon, we don't have a finance program. We don't have a tax assistance program. We're a statewide nonprofit, a member of the Team Massachusetts. But other than the site location program, we don't operate these programs. But when we hear from a need like that, we are going to circle the wagons with the rest of Team Massachusetts to determine what's the best option to consider for this opportunity. And I know MOBD gets a lot of those general inquiries and is generally the clearinghouse for a great first place to go to their regional team to help a company figure that out.
Yeah, I'll just add, and I think I understand Roberta's question better when it's not written, when I heard you ask it, Roberta. And by the way, hello, Roberta, nice to see you.
Hello, and I will try to improve my technical writing skills. Sorry.
So some incentives coexist with others, some don't. So when we respond to a larger prospect in writing, by and large, this would be when Jean and myself or a member of my team is responding. More specifically, whether it's the Economic Development Incentive Program and the Mass Life Sciences Center tax incentives, we'll be clear to make sure we illustrate which incentives can coexist or cannot coexist. But we'll do that all under, most times we'll do it under one cover. In fact, every time we'll do it under one cover to make it easier and cleaner on the company if we're working directly with the company or consultant, real estate broker, whomever that might be. I mean, we're trying to really make this more of a one-stop, single point of contact, one access point into the Commonwealth. So, gone are the days when you dial 1-800 ... to try to get each agency. We really want to make this easier, cleaner, more pleasant. So we'll make all of those scenarios cleaner and easier. Are we perfect? No. Do we provide tax advice? No. But if there's lending programs that coexist, we'll let the client know. If there's lending programs that do not coexist, we'll let the client know. Same thing with the tax incentive programs.
So for someone like Mass Life Science that has obviously a number of programs, I guess to be more specific, is it sort of a cafeteria style selection, or does Mass Life Science look at the application and is it dependent on the size of the company as to how much of the incentives or how many of the incentives get offered? I'm just wondering, is it due to the expertise of the applicant to know which programs to apply for, or is it due to the expertise of the Team Massachusetts that says, wow, you qualify for 6 out of 10 and we're willing, because of the size of the company and the job potential, we're willing to offer as many incentives as possible. I'm trying to understand who needs to hold the most expertise to really navigate all of the programs, which is fabulous that we have so many programs available to attract companies, but just trying to understand what the relationship is and how much the applicant needs to know in order to get the most benefit from their application.
Yeah, I can hop in on that if that's helpful. I'll say first that one of my favorite things I heard when I first came to Team Massachusetts was that there's no wrong door. So talk to any of us, you're getting to the same place. MOBD is a great place to start. If it is a life sciences company, the tax incentive program I mentioned is competitive and only open for a limited window of time every year formally. So when the time comes to actually apply for it, be accepted into it, be awarded, we are definitely in touch with any of the companies that we've had business development contact with, either through Team Massachusetts, through a municipality, through a regional development agency. So we know that those applications are coming and we're ready to address any questions they might have. When it's a company that's considering coming to Massachusetts, we are generally part of the response to the RFP. We outline these incentives, we sort of explain what's available, but the actual application period isn't open until usually it's January to February of any given year, and they're applying for the jobs that they'll create in the coming year. So you're welcome to reach out to me anytime if you have a life sciences company in any stage or considering growth. But those two programs, the tax incentive program for companies that are already here and Mass Tag for companies that are considering moving here. Those are really the two. All those other ones I mentioned are really for companies that are definitely already here and probably already pursuing some kind of very specific project, probably with a nonprofit partner. So no wrong door, and life science wise, reach out to me with anything.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd also add, just in terms of timing, there's never really a bad time. There's no such thing as too soon to start talking with one of the team partners of Team Massachusetts, or a specific organization. So if it's a life science project, and we have a lot of people on the screen, I see a lot of folks in economic development, see a lot of folks who are not in the private sector. If if you have a client, if you're working with a prospect, and perhaps it looks like a year out or a year and a half out before they're going to consider entering into an agreement on a property, or they're at the point where they are ready to expand. It's never really too early to make an introduction and to start talking with that prospect. The sooner the better, frankly, because as Gene noted, there are some programs that do have different deadlines and so forth. And just because you passed a deadline doesn't mean that the entire next year is not open to you in terms of pursuing these types of programs, or because the EACC meeting for the EDIP program just happened on that date, you suddenly have to forego pursuing EDIP. Well, there are other meetings down the road. So it's never too soon.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. So Zach, who is with the Westboro EDC, has a couple of questions. The first question is, what is the role of municipal government in Team Massachusetts? And secondly, what can municipal economic development staff do to help encourage these kinds of projects in our towns?
Peter, you want to field that one? The importance of municipal government.
So I probably didn't say this when I was talking about the Economic Development Incentive Program, and I should have, but the program is locally driven. So with the exception of the Mass Life Sciences Center, in order to utilize the Economic Development Incentive Program, there has to be local buy-in. So the locality, the municipalities have an extraordinary amount of influence and importance in our program. Many times, and I actually, we use salesforce.com to track our projects, and our number one source of leads is from municipalities. So there, we consider the municipal governments to be our partners. We receive the leads. We work with collaboratively with municipalities. So I would say it's very important for municipal governments to stay in contact with your regional directors, and we would then bring you on a project by project basis into if it's not a Massachusetts company, we would bring you into the Team Massachusetts umbrella for that project.
Yeah, incredibly important, and I have seen over the years so many municipalities make such incredible efforts, be so receptive, so responsive. It really helps make these, and sometimes you can do all those things and a project still goes elsewhere. Absolutely happens. Being in economic development is realizing that a lot of things are not going to fall your way for a variety of reasons. There's so many variables these companies are looking at in terms of their locational decisions. But there are so many, being responsive, having that conversation with whoever from Team Massachusetts initially reaches out to you, really being responsive to that. And often, and it's one thing I would say when we approach a community or MOBD or whoever regarding a specific project, and it's a mad rush, the company needs to have a meeting, they need to do a site visit on Monday and it's, Friday morning, and you have to help prepare for a site visit and get people from your community involved, Department of, Health, for example, or DPW or whatever. And you want us to do that in one business day to help pull that. Well, just please know when that situation happens, it's because that's the deadline that the company or the corporate site selector gave the Team Massachusetts. It often, unfortunately, works that way where, despite the fact, and that BMS project is one example. I can recall they contacted us on the Monday before Thanksgiving and said, we're coming next Monday. This was the largest private investment in Massachusetts in that time period, and they gave us hardly any time to facilitate that. That happens, unfortunately, a lot. It's because these companies often want to act as much as possible in a confidential manner. They don't want to let information out there too freely, and so often it can go very fast, and then that's followed by a long wait. You can facilitate, all of this activity to support a project, and suddenly the project is on hiatus, or it suddenly is in a pause, and things can turn around in a snap. But having that responsibility, municipalities are such important partners to all that happens with state Massachusetts with all these projects. They're indispensable. Annie?
Great. So Kelly, I can see in the chat that you've responded to this one question about Treehouse Brewing, but I'll read the question, and if you'd like to further elaborate, or if anyone else would like to chime in. So this is a question from T. Downey. And the question is, given the types of businesses listed for tax exempt financing, how did Treehouse qualify? I represent a major new hospitality/entertainment user to the state and didn't think tax exempt support would be possible.
Well, you're probably right. It's typically not, but breweries are considered manufacturers, and so that's why they qualify. It's kind of it's an outlier from what we typically get involved in, because we don't do restaurants, we don't do typical hospitality, but breweries are manufacturers. Who knew?
Now, I want to ask Peter, in terms of hospitality, in terms of something like would something like a hotel going to a city, would that be qualify for EDIP?
Yes, we've used the program for hotels several times. There are some requirements when a hotel does enter our program. We require a marketing study. We require that the site is deriving its rooms from outside of the Commonwealth, and the study needs to point to just that. But with those criteria in mind, there is the opportunity for hotels to utilize the Economic Development Incentive Program.
Great. Anybody else queued up?
So we do have one more question. So this is a question from MJ Adams. Can you speak to how Team Massachusetts responds to requests about funding or incentives for the emerging cannabis industry?
I can start with funding. At least for mass development, we are not prepared to do any financing or lending with the cannabis industry yet. If and when it is federally approved, they're considered manufacturers. It would be a great source for our funding. But as it is right now, it's a no for us, unfortunately.
And we are not engaged with the cannabis industry either. There is a Cannabis Control Commission. We've referred any inquiries to the Cannabis Control Commission. The operators, the folks that are in business in Massachusetts, are entitled to use the state's workforce training fund grant program if they have a payroll in Massachusetts. But we're not engaging with that industry. We're sending every inquiry to the CCC for their team, their staff to work with.
So I had a question actually sent directly to me, and it was regarding thresholds in terms of job creation. Do any of the programs discussed have minimum thresholds that need to be met in order to be pursued? So maybe let's start with how about to Jean and the Life Science Center? Any minimums there in terms of job creation?
Sure. Yeah, ours is easy because it is explicit. You have to have a minimum of 10 full-time employees already within Massachusetts to formally qualify for that tax incentive program. So it's something that we explain to companies coming here for the first time, and that's sort of the purpose of having those two programs, Mass Tag. So conceivably, a company would come to Massachusetts, they have to commit to creating at least 10 jobs within their first 12 months. They would get that Mass Tag, $15,000 times number of jobs, maybe it's 10, so that would be 150,000. Then the following year, they're considered existing in Massachusetts. They'd be eligible for the tax incentive program, same dollar figure, but they already have met that 10 employee threshold, so they can apply, but they still have to commit to creating 10 more. So for us, that number 10 comes up a lot, so it's easy to remember for most of our programs. Our other programs that I mentioned, we have some that we have a seed fund, we have other support for early stage companies, but in terms of actual tax incentives, you have to have 10 employees or be committing to creating 10 within 12 months.
Peter, anything on the EDIP?
So there's two parts to that. To be a local incentive only project where the program will be split off between the municipality and the state, there is not a job creation requirement. So the municipality would make that decision. All that would need to happen there is there has to be an increased assessed value that occurs because of the investment that the company is making. As for tax credit support, all of the Mass Office of Business Development team members are trained to do a back of the envelope calculation for manufacturers. There's a 3% investment tax credit that manufacturers receive by right in Massachusetts. So if it's a manufacturer, every team member would be able to do a quick on-the-spot calculation so that the amount of jobs would basically factor in as to whether or not the state, through the Economic Development Incentive Program, provided tax credit support. So there's no hard and fast answer there, but on a per job basis, we do have some restrictions based upon our budget per year.
And how about you, Kelly? Does a project comes along, looking for financing, and they can only attach one new job?
So we don't have a hard and fast number either. There's no specific number, because I'll say that especially in recent years, we are all about job creation, but we're equally concerned about job retention. So there could be companies that need to automate in order to stay in business and stay profitable. And so if they're staying in Massachusetts, we consider that just as important as growing in Massachusetts. We're not going to tie their hands by adding jobs.
Got it. Annie, any more questions? I have one more that came in.
Yes, one just came in. So this is from Jessica DeRoy. And her question is, on the rare occasion that a single applicant is eligible for multiple team Massachusetts programs and have been chosen for all that they apply for, is there a ceiling for the amount of money that they can actually receive? Looks like a no based on head shaking. Is that?
No, I
Fair.
feel like we love to see companies stack these. Like if we're investing in your success, it's because we think you're a great company and we think it's a great idea. So if there's ways to stack programs, we're happy to facilitate that. So we'd love to see that scenario. And I don't think, no, I've never seen a ceiling of any kind.
Agree.
Yeah, there's no maximum amount that we would invest in growing companies. I will say that the Economic Development Incentive Program credit, our tax credits, do not coexist with the Mass Life Science Center tax incentives. That's the only caveat I would say when answering that question.
So I have a quick follow-up to that is all of your organizations do have ceilings in terms of the amount of awards that can go out in any one year, correct? And could you know what those ceilings are, Peter, in terms of tax incentives?
So the Economic Development Incentive Program budget per year is $30 million, of which $10 million is allocated to housing or HDIP. So we have, in round terms, about $20 million. Some of that is committed year to year. We have $20 million in new money. Of that, $5 million is allocated to refundable tax credits, and some of that is committed on outer years for previous projects. So short answer, $20 million. It's not as clean and easy as that because there has been some commitments made for major economic development projects that have already located in Massachusetts.
I'll do a quick follow-up with that. Our program is $20 million a year, usually. It varies a little bit. And no one applicant can receive more than 25% of the total that's awarded in any given year. So for us, that means that for a single company, it's $5 million, ballpark a little bit over 300 jobs. Timeline-wise, though, as Peter was mentioning, that we are able to sometimes make commitments if it's the kind of project that we've identified as of particular benefit to a region or the ecosystem or the economic recovery or something. So for that reason, that does end up speaking for some of those funds, but for all intents and purposes, the ballpark cap for us is about 5 million. That's just determined by our budget though.
And Kelly, any ceilings for you?
Only $2.5 million for the Emerging Technology Loan Fund, $7.5 million for our general fund, and $10 million for the bonds per project.
So I will only add, and I'm not lobbying here, but I would say all of these ceilings are far too low. And we should, feel free to advocate for growing these ceilings so that Team Massachusetts can do even more for prospects and do what. So my last question, we're coming up on time. Last question I had was and I think I know the answer for this, but let's hear from all you. Or a local company looking to expand versus a company from out of state looking to relocate jobs to Massachusetts. Who gets preference? I have an answer. Anyone
want to apply?
I have an answer.
Go ahead, Jean.
I'm worried it's going to be different though. We love companies that are homegrown, that are already here, that are expanding. I do feel like some of our programs are targeted toward that, try to attract as many people outside as possible. But I think numbers wise, if you look at the growth, I think we've seen more direct benefit from those homegrown expansions that stay in Massachusetts, the ones that aren't flight risks to other states, and other states are very competitive with these programs. So the ones that we can keep and grow here, I'll point to Moderna just as a recent poster child. We love to see that over at MLSC.
Kelly?
We love both.
That was going to be my answer. We love them all. Peter?
I said first one to apply because we like both. We don't grade the jobs. We just want all of the jobs.
Well, Annie, I don't think we have any more questions. And that is the case. So great.
I see one. Bonnie Sullivan is raising her hand.
Oh, her actual hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, she's just raising her physical hand. But she's muted.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Hi, Bonnie.
Okay. Hi, am I unmuted?
You are.
Yep.
We can hear you.
Okay.
We can
Well,
hear
it
you.
is nice to see everyone, so many former colleagues and all, and thanks for all of the updated comments. It was really, really, really great. I just wanted to take the opportunity to use this opportunity for everyone being together to introduce Zach Bowman as the new the town of Westboro's new Economic Development Committee Coordinator. And as you can see, he's not even a month on the job, but he's takes the initiative and not afraid to ask questions and gain familiarity with the various programs out there. So hopefully, if you haven't met him yet, you'll be meeting Zach soon. So, but thank you. Great seeing everyone.
Well, so as I think it was a great quote from Casablanca, the end of the movie, Zach, welcome to the fight. We're glad to have you on the expanded Massachusetts team. To everybody, really, this is a great turnout with really a lot of folks from the economic development space and a lot of people from the private sector, very well represented. So thank you, Peter. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Ben Bradford. Thank you, Paul Bauer, for your opening remarks. Just want to make a couple quick points coming. Keep your eyes tuned for upcoming events from MassEcon, and the presentation you saw today, we will be sending out to everybody just so that I know you've taken great notes, but you can also refer to the presentation itself. So stay tuned for that email coming your way. And thank you again to our sponsors, Nutter, Lincoln Property Company, Bowditch, and MassBio. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And one last thanks to the speakers. We will see you all down the road. And thank you, Team Massachusetts. Everybody have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.